in industries and in private networks. We have also better support of time-sensitive communication that is really important for what we call ultra-low latency and ultra-reliability. And we have defined common capabilities for service enabler architecture layers. So this one is a set of enablers defined in the network that is the interaction with third parties. Cellular IoT, Internet of Things, was already present in 3G and 4G, but we have included the same set of functionality for 5G. So now we can use IoT communication over 3G, 4G, and 5G. And same thing was done for V2X services, where now we have advanced services over 5G. As I said, it is about the introduction of new features, but we have at the end the need to maintain and enhance existing services. So we have enhancement to mission critical services, a public warning system, future wireless mobile communication system. I could also add maritime, health, and so on. So from a protocol point of view, the main aspect is that the work done on release 15 was really useful to be able to add a new feature in release 16, and it will be the same for release 17. So it's why we took a while to define the architecture of the core network part for the release 15, but this is the work for the incoming releases. So what about the status right now of the release 16? So the release 15 was frozen. So frozen means that it's not possible to introduce any new feature in the specification to support new features. So the release 15 was frozen in June last year. And since we're actively working on the release 16. As you know, we were one of the first organizations impacted by the COVID-19. So at the beginning of the year in January, we have decided to cancel all face-to-face meetings and to replace them by e-meetings in Q1. As you can understand, this kind of meetings are less efficient, even if I have to admit that at least at the city level, the production was far better than expected. So it was a huge effort of the delegates, but I think it was really useful. And for the next quarter, we have decided also to go on with the electronic format for the meetings. And Q2 will be dedicated to the completion of the remaining work. Approximately, it's about 10%, and it's not so critical. It could have been done in March, but because we have a little bit time just to be able to progress on some topics, we have decided to postpone some of them and to come back on these topics for the next quarter. So for the release 16 freeze, we are confident in the fact that this release will be frozen at the next plenary. That means in June. Here you have a set of links that could be useful. So you will find information about 3GPP. You can have also some news about 3GPP using the following links. And for the two remaining ones, they are really interesting because you could find a clear overview of the set of features that are defined per release. So it is not dedicated only to CT, it's covering the overall system. So you have one for release 15, and you have the current one for the release 16 that you can use also. Obviously, it's only a draft because this one will be finalized after the completion of the release 16, but you have already inside a clear view of what it's supposed to be done for release 16. And I think it's time for questions.
Thank you, Lionel. I'm sorry if you heard my phone going off there. It was my fault. Lionel, a couple of questions come in. The first one would be, you mentioned mission critical and the transport sector and also industrial as use cases that are coming into the group. Where do you see the next, if you like, vertical use case coming in? Do you have any foresight as to what which other verticals might be joining the groups?
Yes, we know already that, for instance, in the scope of the release 17, so the next release, we will have to integrate satellites. That will be a huge impact. So not only in CT, but in RAN and so on. So it will be a new one. We will have also more requirements coming from the existing one, because today, obviously, we have some support of the automotive industry and health and so on. But we'll have additional one in the coming release. And because now the system is stable enough to be able to build on, so it will be something I think really easily to support and to fulfill the requirements.
Very good. And are you seeing sort of an increase in participation in CT? Because do they have, for these sectors, would they have necessarily protocol experts who could come in and finish off the work in stage 3?
Actually, it's something that we're aiming to. We managed to do that for mission critical. We have a lot of delegates that have joined 3GPP only to be able to develop the mission critical services, so the protocol aspect for the mission critical services. So we have now experts in 3GPP. I know that we will have the same for other area. We hope to have people from the automotive part. I know that we will have people from the satellite side. So the aim at the CT level is just so obviously we can still rely on the people that were already there in the group, but we need more expertise just to ensure that when we are developing something, it will truly fulfill the requirements of the verticals.
Right. Another question on the e-meetings. How has that worked? In fact, of course, you're working across at least 3 time zones. How does it work in terms of participation? I see that emails sort of replace the microphone. So if you want to get attention, you send an email with the subject matter and that. But how do you deal with the lateness in Asia and the middle of the day in Europe and the early mornings in the United States, etc.? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Obviously, it was not so easy to set up this kind of meetings, but we were lucky, at least at the city level, because it was not the first time that we were relying on e-meetings. So, based on the past experience, we have decided defined different principles and best practice, I could say, for city working group and also for other working groups. So, first of all, what we have said is that to define different phases for the meeting. So you have a phase where all the documents need to be available. You have a first phase of comments. So for this, we are using emails with a dedicated subject line that everyone needs to follow. For instance, you clearly indicate the scope of the discussion and what you intend to do with this email. For instance, it's just a comment, or you have a reserve, or you want to explain concerns. And so you have a first phase of that. Based on that, you have ongoing discussion using the email list. After that, you have a second phase where all the comments are taken into account and new versions of the documents are made available. And you have another phase of comments again. And at the end, you have the final output of the meeting. And usually it was good. If it is needed, we can set up a dedicated conf call or web conf, which is tricky because, as you said, with the time zone, you have a kind of a couple hours per day where it could be fine for everyone. But at least when there is a need to discuss an important topic or or a topic that is not so easy to address using only emails, we can rely on that. So it depends on, so decision is per working group and per topics, but you can use also this WebConf tools if needed.
Yeah, understood. Thanks for that insight. I've got a couple more questions. One which I quite like has just come in. Would you asking you to elaborate a little bit on some of the typical use cases for railway mobile communication system for the future railway system? Do you have any sort of insight into the use cases that are there for that?
On the use cases, not exactly, because the set of requirements are defined by SA. So it is not something that we are really addressing at the city level. At least what I can say is that the idea is to create a system, a telecommunication system that could be used in the train. And the idea is to be able to provide all the information, so to send all the information to this, let's say, private networks. That could be a train or whatever, but to send all the needed information to this private networks, I would say, and to ensure that this private network will be able to establish communication, share information, and so on. So it's a kind of interaction between the mobile networks and the specific network defined for railways. If you want to have a clear, if you want to have a clear explanation or description of the typical use case, you could refer to one of the spec for release 15 and release 16, providing all the set of features defined for this, and you will find information there, and you will even find a pointer to the specification, providing all the requirements for a railway mobile communication system.
Excellent. Thanks, Lionel. I think that's about it. We're just about to run out of time. A lot of the next two presentations, there's another one in half an hour on the radio side, and then the SA chairman, you just mentioned SA, Guillaume will speak in a couple of hours' time about that, and we'll hear a lot more about Release 17, what's coming up on that as well. So for the moment, Lionel, thanks very much for doing the webinar.
Thank you, and thank you for attending this small talk. I hope it was clear enough, and see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.